So I found out that it's almost impossible to teach an old Christian anything truly new, because they're just not open to learning anything that they don't understand, because they've been in that crowd of retards for so long that it's eaten up their ability to learn anything outside of what they think they know. Um, and it's really difficult to point out to somebody that you don't know anything when they honestly think that they honestly know something, when they don't. They don't know anything. You don't know anything. Nobody knows anything. We just have certain grasps, certain understandings of certain forms of knowledge, or certain forms of ideology, whatever. The whole point of this being is that you should shut the fuck up and listen for a second. Instead of talking shit about things you don't understand. You have these pastors and stuff. They'll get like an overview of something, and they'll skim and scan across whatever's written on the page, and they'll find words that they disagree with, and then they'll talk shit about them. Just like the Hilbert's Hotel thing, coming from Craig. William Lane Craig is a disgusting proselytizer, whatever, of just brain poison. He's not trying to make anybody feel better about themselves, or he's not trying to lead anybody to God. What he's trying to do is make himself look important, like a lot of these, I guess you want to call them theophages do. They're parasites. There was that Jew, Rabbi Lapin, who had said that atheists are parasites, when it turns out that religious leaders are parasites. If you pay attention, if you watch them, you'll learn that their entire existence is centered around these followers that they have. Instead of living totally their own lives, they're living vicariously through others. We'll go and spread the message and make sure people come to this church. Make sure people listen to my message. Fuck my message. Your message. Anybody's message. Messages are bullshit. Just pay attention to what you've got around you. That's what science is for. Science is for explaining the world. It's for explaining natural processes that weren't easily explainable to the savages that wrote the Bible. Oh, those people, they knew what they were talking about. No, they didn't. They didn't have any idea what they were talking about. It's archaic knowledge. It's coming from a time when people didn't have a grasp on natural functions. They didn't know what lightning was. They didn't know what plate tectonics were. And I can go back over this 1,000 times. I mean, we could sit here in a room for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. I could show these people video. I could show these people, like, actual experiments that have been done using evolution as a template, or using math as a template, and they'd still be like, well, it doesn't say that in the Bible. Fuck the Jesus. I was told one time, I was talking to this Christian lady, and she said, well, do you believe everything you read in a book? And I was like, well, you obviously do. That's a book. The only difference between your book and my book is that my book is based on factual, testable knowledge. Your book is based on the tribal rantings of some 2,000-year dead savage that would stone his wife for talking against him. Oh, that's just Old Testament story. It's in the New Testament too, by the way. If you read the Bible all the way through, you'll see that there are massive stonings in the New Testament as well. It just, crucifixions, stonings. Oh, but it's all good as long as God says it's okay. How do you know that that's the word of God and not the word of some jealous tribal leader that didn't get the woman he wanted, or, just whatever story, just old stories lumped together, changed to fit the worldview of some ancient babbling idiot. Well, I learned this from the Upanishads and I changed it to fit my worldview. That's probably what happened. They probably met some monks along the way because the Silk Route went through the Middle East, Silk Road, whatever you want to call it. and on into Asia. And I'm sure that there were Chinese monks, and I'm sure that there were, Mongols and Goths and Visigoths and just heathens, as the religious people would call them, because they don't come from the Middle East, and that's what heathen means, land of the heath, north of the Middle East. By the way, if you do your historic reading of the peoples of the time, I know that's my language is really confusing. It's confusing me. It's pulling me off track. Either way, get a grip, man. This is a modern society. This is a modern world. We don't, if we were to go and strike all the education, all the educational fields, if we were just to strip them and just get rid of all their material and replace it with the Bible, we would be living in the fucking Dark Ages again. But it would be okay for the Christians. It'd be fine for them. It'd be great for them, because then they could preach from their pedestals unhampered by, modes of communication such as online video and discourse and whatnot. But it pisses them off so bad that, and I was watching another video and I realized this is the truth. No matter what Christian download you go to, they have either disabled the comments or put that, comments up for review by page owner thing, because they don't want to address anybody honestly. They just, like some other dude said, I can't remember his name. He said, they don't really give a shit about having any kind of conversation or discourse or whatever. They just want to put out their brain poison, and whoever latches onto it and gives them a thumbs up, well, that just solidifies their stance as, oh, I'm a good Christian and I know what I'm talking about. No, you don't know what you're talking about. And that's the point of atheists. That's the point that atheists are trying to make. You don't know any fucking thing. Nothing. There's nothing that you know. Nothing at all other than how you feel inside of your own skin. I had this conversation with a Christian the other day. He was talking about, and I even made a video about it, canned my t-shirt. We got onto the subject of empathy. I told him, I said, you can't tell me how I feel in my skin. Well, that's what empathy's for. No, empathy is when somebody is having an emotional response or had a similar situation as you. You can empathize with the situation, you can empathize with the emotion because you've had the same situation, or at least situations that are relatable to the subject. That's what empathy is. And then he pulls out the dictionary definition of what empathy is. And I said, dude, that's not what I'm talking about. What I am talking about is that you cannot feel my pain, no matter how similar your experience was to mine. You cannot feel my pain the way that I feel my pain. I might be able to tell you how I feel my pain, but that's not going to convey the actual feeling of it. And dumbass just kept going on and on and on. Instead of listening or reading my posts or whatever it is, I know we're not having a conversation, we were posting back and forth. And instead of actually reading the posts, he just kept going on and on and on and on and on, because he thought he fucking knew something. We don't know anything as a species. We don't know anything at all. Just how we feel in our own skin. Now, you can have these conversations with these people, and like I said, you can show them all sorts of information. You can show them all sorts of varying views of the world, and they're still going to live in their one secluded little one world view, because their pastor told them it was the right way. Or their people in their church said, oh, well, that's Jesus acting in your life. Well, no, you found your fucking keys because you were looking, asshole. God damn it. Oh, it gets so fucking tiring. I had a headache all day yesterday. I watched, whatever his name is. I can't even think. I don't even want to think of his name. It was like the beginning of his video is, hello, atheists, or something like that. And then he talks about how he's not religious, yet he follows Christ. Christianity, no matter what, If you're following somebody, you are a religious fucking acolyte. You know, and you say that atheism is a religion. I don't agree with all the other atheists. You know, in fact, I would rather have disagreements so we could learn something from one another. That's how it works. But when you think you know something, you can't learn. It's impossible because your brain is geared in one direction. You're not able to peel yourself away from what you think you know. You know, oh, well, this is absolute knowledge. Ah, God. You know, absolute knowledge as coming from a 2,000-year dead battling savage that was part of a tribe that had to get his people in line or whatever, you know, and if it's not even tribal anymore because it became social it became social when Constantine got a hold of it. And people before Constantine, the emperors that knew that they could use that message to control the populace. Ugh. Jeez, well, that's all I got for you today. I'm just, it gave me a headache like all day yesterday. Just some of the videos that I watched coming from the theistic side. Just, I don't know what it did to my brain, but it hurt. My head was killing me for hours, man. And it does make you dumber. It dumbs you down to watch these people try to sound logical. But you can't sound logical as long as the information that you have is not logical. It's not rational. It's not even based on reality. And half of it, more, I'd say that 4% of the Bible is the average that I heard. Only 4% of the Bible is actually factual in nature. It's not factual all the way around. It's just factual in nature. And it's 4%. Roughly 4 or 5 pages of the Bible can actually be verified through science or verified through observation. The rest of it is just a bunch of bullshit. The Jews belonged to the Egyptians, but that's not true either. The Egyptians being meticulous record keepers, even keeping record of their failures. The Christians would say, oh, well, they would never claim having the Jews as slaves because they were too proud to admit it. No, that was the point of my last statement. They were meticulous record keepers, and they kept records of their own failures. That's what any honest society does. The dishonest society would be people like Christian groups twisting physical and scientific knowledge to mesh in with their brain poison. Not understanding exactly what they're talking about. That's what that is. That's an illogical society. Those are illogical people that live on rationality alone. But the rationality of their group consciousness, as opposed to being worldly and just meshing with everybody. You gotta talk shit and think you fucking know something, and talk from your fucking your soapbox pulpits and whatnot. So, anyways, that's what I got for you today. Comments, questions, likes, dislikes below. Thank you very much. Have a beautiful day.